Hi, I'm Ronnie from Ronnie's Garage. I am the Technical Chairperson for the Rolls-Royce Owners Club of Southern California region. We're holding our monthly tech meet, and today we're going to be working on the brake pumps and brake pump push rod for a 1972 Shadow.
Locking tabs, since the measurements are right, the locking tabs I bend up so those bolts don't come undone. You don't want that to happen. You can replace them if you like, but if you have, most of the time they don't break. Just as long as you have one of the ears, it should hold it. Engineers will be aghast at me saying that, but I've been doing this a long time and I've yet to have one of those come undone. And since it's a 1/4 inch bolt, it doesn't have to be super tight. It has to be probably about 8 pounds, maybe 10. So someone asked me what I used. I used the right stuff. This is the stuff right here. I buy it in the big tubes. You can get it in smaller tubes. It's really good stuff. So, like I said, you don't need much. So I got this nice little caulking gun, and it's a very, very slight amount. There's no oil sitting in this area, but there is crankcase pressure.
But that's called right stuff.
Right stuff.
What? Of all their products, are you saying, what is it called?
It's
Sealer?
called Right Stuff Gasket
Gasket.
Sealer maker.
You can look it up on their computer.
Yeah, Permatex makes this. They don't pay me anything to say that. All right, so that's all it takes. It doesn't take much. A lot of people think that if a little works, then a lot will work better, and that's not the case. There we go.
And that's to prevent all the oil from coming out all over the place and dirt from going in.
Well, yeah. It seals up the crankcase. These don't leak very often. More. It didn't go on the intake, I know that.
So the wear and tear on both the cams is about the same?
I don't know what the old one was because I didn't reuse those parts. I took those parts, the rear one, off of another car.
Oh, okay.
A good used set. The front one, it wore about 10 thousandths. So between the cam follower and the camshaft, it's lost 10 thousandths, which is not a big deal.
And what kind of brake fluid do you use in this car?
Well, the factory says to use a RR363. We in our shop here, that's been here 35 years, specializing in Rolls-Royce and Bentley, use the Castrol GT LMA. We've had no problems. There's a slight difference in the formulas, and they say it's lubrication, and that's fine. So, if you want to be safe, use a RR363, or you can use a GT LMA like I use, or have used. This ought to cause a lot of controversy on the Rolls-Royce forum, but I don't mind. After I tighten all the bolts, I always go back and double check them, just to make sure they're all the same. So with the amount of sealer I put on there, it's not going to squish out all over the place. You don't want to see that. That means you put too much on it. You might see a little bit, but anyways, there we are. And then overhaul the pumps, put it all back together, do the accumulator. Whenever you do a pump push rod, it is essential that you do the accumulator also. One other note while we're here is you always want to do the reservoir too. This is the brake reservoir, and as you can see, these are the sight glasses. This shows you the levels. See, it's pretty filthy in there. If it's filthy out here, it's usually filthy inside. I've already pulled the bolts off of this. It has a fine mesh screen you want to clean. It also has this baffle in here. The later cars have two halves. And this is fluid. And as you can see, there is some junk in there. These are some fine mesh screens which unscrew from here. They're 1 inch side, and a lot of times, the last time I had one of these apart, I had, you see the level of this fluid here, I had that much thickness. It almost looked like sand sediments. So when it plugs this up, it's going to star fluid to the high pressure system, and it won't build pressure. So what I'll do is I'll take these filters out, clean them, clean the reservoir, pull the cover off of here. There's some pieces of glass here that come off and O-rings behind them. I'll clean it up and put it all back together, and then you have a fresh reservoir with fresh fluid for this new accumulator. Overhaul brake pump. Brake should work great. One thing that you find on these Shadows especially, since they have that big reservoir that holds all that brake fluid in this high pressure system, and the brake fluid runs basically not through it but in the engine, right? You have to service those reservoirs. Look at the garbage on this thing. This is just a brake pump that, and what happens is fluid comes in these holes. And the last reservoir, there's a car outside that I did a accumulator job on and reservoir service. When I pulled the cover off, it was like sand in the bottom, and it was almost 1 inch thick. So it hadn't been serviced in years. And that's something you're supposed to do quite often on these cars. I don't know what the exact service schedule, but at least every 2 years. That is why this is one of the most high maintenance cars Rolls-Royce ever made, because the service schedule on these can be quite expensive because it's labor intensive. I forget which, I think the 4-year service is like 35 hours. $100 an hour, $125 an hour. That's just the labor, not to mention all the parts and fluids and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that helps. It helps more than you know. Yeah. And this holds like a gallon of fluid, so most cars only hold a pint, maybe a pint and a half. All right, so someone asked, how do you clean this stuff? I use just this aerosol can brake cleaner. There are different brands. Most of them are non-chlorinated now. And basically all you do is just take it over a safe place, trash can or whatever, and you just spray it off. You can see how it just takes that crud away. Don't worry about the discoloration. A lot of times this aluminum plate will look corroded. Just clean it off the best you can. It's just a reservoir, it's not a big deal. So that's how you do that. And then I usually use rags and soak up the cleaner or the fluid in there, and also wipe it down really good. I can pull one of those reservoir screens off so we can look at it.
And what about the filter on top? How do you clean that?
Oh, the filter on top is pretty self-explanatory. You spray it and blow it off. Oops.
Same thing, okay.
Yeah. If your gaskets are pretty intact, I wouldn't worry about changing those. It's 1 inch is the socket size for this. Be very careful with your brake fluid. It'll take off your paint if you leave it on there. So as you can see, this thing unscrews. And this has some garbage on it. You can see that. I've seen these to where they're totally collapsed and just full of gunk. So that means you're just not getting fluid in there. It'll take forever for the pressures to build, and it'll just cause more grief. It'll also make the pumps make noise because they're cavitating. So to clean this, you just use a spray cleaner also. Just like this. It's a very, very fine mesh stainless screen there. Used, these are about 80 bucks each, I think. There you go. Not for the faint of heart.
No.
All right. I think that's it. Thanks for joining us.